expertise, you need to understand that the world sees you as black, so you must get used to that definition because it's going to be carried with you wherever you go. When people see other people, the first thing they see is color.
Welcome to One Drop Elopes with me and Moses. I'm your host, Vanita Arset. One Drop Elopes is my constructive response to demystify and replace white supremacy with a just system. One Drop Elopes is a weekly broadcast on Intellectual Radio that streams live every Sunday at 12 noon Central. For unaware listeners, One Drop Elopes is not just an entertaining radio show. It's a model that on every show educates and equips our people to utilize their gifts in a constructive manner. Therefore, One Drop Elopes will showcase and be a collective archive of Black folk who are actively doing their part to pursue a wide array of perspectives, discussions, and presentations. The chief sponsor for One Drop Elopes is Bonita's Homemade Things. Email Bonita at bonitaarset@gmail.com to place an order or for more information. Okay, hello everybody. For those of you all listening on Facebook or YouTube or IntellectualRadio.com, thank you so much for checking us out, or listening to us. You also know that you can listen live through Spreaker, and also you can catch us on iTunes or iHeart. This is our third show. We got discussing the Jesus as a revolutionary, and Jesus. Some Christians, they look at Jesus as being the part of the Trinity, so it's very appropriate for me to have three different shows to discuss this. And what we're doing with these three shows, each and every show was basically to have a conversation about if Jesus is a revolutionary, then what is the constructive response expected by those who follow Jesus? So the Christian constructive response to white supremacy, well, of course, which is racism. Today in the studio to help me discuss this matter, I have one of my brother warrior friends, Brother Richard. So, Brother Richard, say hello to the people.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me, Vanita. I'm looking forward to taking this journey with you as we wake up a few people who might be asleep or who hasn't ever taken a look at this subject matter in the way that you and I will be exploring it today.
All right, then. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to share with the people about who you are and why on earth would I choose you to come and represent Black folk actively doing their part to pursue justice?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Brother Richard, I'm a native of Chicago. I'm an activist, entrepreneur, businessman, and I'm a father. So I understand my position that must be played in this hostile environment in which we are unfortunately up under every day of our lives just due to melanated skin. However, there is a solution, and what I want to say to my people, don't give up. Let's stand up.
Hallelujah. Okay, so we are here today. Now, one of the things that I want to say right away that I forgot that I didn't say the last two times when we did this show, right? Okay. About talking about Jesus as revolutionary. I've already shared with the people. So if this is who Jesus is, yes, Jesus is revolutionary. We've already defined for the people what it means to be revolutionary. Mm-hmm. But I think hold on, I'm grabbing the Neely Fuller dictionary because I think what we did on the first show is when we defined revolutionary, we used it from a Webster's perspective. We found that it's somebody who does not somebody who resists, somebody who will react and resist the current way of things, like the current philosophy of things. And then we also, the next time we talked about it, we discussed how this guy, Dr. Reza, he was saying that to be a revolutionary, and this is what Jesus was, to resist the social order, okay. Right? Mm-hmm. So today, I think, especially since one of the things we do here on One Drop Elopes is study Neely Fuller's anti-racist code, is most definitely we want to look at Neely Fuller's definition. And so here he says, revolution is a word that he always says this. It's a word you use. Hold on, we got revolution. Avoid using this word. Instead, practice using the words compensation and or compensatory, making up for what is missing that is also needed and should be provided. When others use the word revolution, ask for a detailed explanation that you can easily understand. Notes. He says, during the existence of white supremacy racism and according to compensatory counter-racist logic, it is best and correct for all the people of the known universe to produce a so-called revolution by first speaking and acting to replace the system of white supremacy racism with the system of justice, balance between people, and correctness, balance between people, creatures, things, etc. The result of this combination of thought, speech, and action should logically be condition of peace. So, for that, um, he wants us to use compensation instead of revolution because we need to be compensated. But then he also says when utilizing the word revolution, look for people to want to seek justice, and that is absolutely what we've been talking about in these past three, the last two times as well as this time, is that revolution is a response or an action towards justice. It's the opposite of being pacifist. You're just not sitting by and idly.
Right.
Okay.
And revolution also is one of those words that you find to be almost tabooish. So we have to address it. And I think the listening audience can really appreciate the way Dr. Neely Fuller, I just gave the definition and how you presented it to give another perspective on it, to not be afraid of it because, like this morning, so many congregations were fooled, getting the Holy Ghost and spirituality. But the actuality of it is, what's the preacher really instilling into his congregation, to stand up for injustices and to really become more like Jesus. And I think a lot of times when people adapt the characteristics of the Jesus of 2,000 years ago, modern day society has a problem with that.
Well, see, the Jesus of 2,000 years ago was, and that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that the Jesus of 2,000 years ago was a Jew who was under the constant rule of the Roman Empire, and he wasn't having it. And he encouraged all of his other people, all the other Jews, to say, "Hey, come on, let's fight this." So, okay, for instance, I was in church one day. I'm gonna tell a quick story. I was in church one day and the pastor was like all excited because there was this brother who he just came home. He was locked up, right? And then after coming home from being locked up, he went to church.
Right.
And because he was trying to make himself better, being a better person. So he goes to church and then he says, and then the pastor's like, "Oh, hey, my brother, thank you so much for coming to church. We so glad to see you back here with us, that you're not locked up anymore. Come on down, my brother. Come on up to the front and, introduce yourself to people," all that stuff. He just display, right?
Okay.
And then after he's on display, then he say to the man, he's like, "Oh, but when you come back to church, make sure you don't have your hair like that, all them braids. You got to cut that out." Okay. And then he said, "And look at your shoes. You can't be wearing Timberlands to church. You got to get some shoes." And then he said, "And make sure you, in your clothes, you jeans on the church." I was so embarrassed for the man. I felt so bad for him. I was just like, how dare you? Like, why on earth would you do this to this brother? He just came home. He may not have all of those things, so-called necessary to be in church. Right. And that reminds me too of this song, Life Jennings. He got this song. He can't remember the name of the title of the song, but it's like he's all describing things. He's like, "Man, grandma, where's the Jesus? I'm looking for your Jesus. He's not in the couch at your home or whatever." But then he also says, "Time is just hard on me. And when did church become such a fashion show?" He says in there, but he curses a effing fashion show. But anyway, the point that I'm making is that a constructive response as Black folk, whether we Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Muslims, regardless of your subscription, your religion, then we need to have we really, really need to support each other, help to work with each other, not downgrade each other just because they don't choose the same outfit that you would choose, right?
Right.
Because that's the easiest way. What do you think?
Well, I mean, just to kind of back up what you were saying, a lot of times, you hear the church, the platform as you are. So when you see people have to go through this dress rehearsal in order to tap into their spirituality, that could definitely cause a red flag onto what is really accepted. Because I recall reading the story of Jesus, and he was too, I say he couldn't worry about it because they were too busy doing law and too busy doing medicine. However, he understood that, his true followers, he had to go reach out into the highways and the byways. And so, when a pastor or a preacher or a reverend, who's ever, part of the clergy that's directing that institution of spirituality is focusing on just somebody's dress code, that may be an issue. And that might be a reason why so many people is outside the church, especially black men.
Yeah, and that reminds me too of I was listening to when he had a radio show, and he said, "Game recognizes game." That's why you don't see very many black men in the Christian church, because they're looking at the pastor. And that also reminds me of, there's this book I'm reading called it's about black men and why do black men pray? And so it's like black men pray in church, right? But it's pray is PREY. There's like a play on the words. And so she's talking about in that book how scary or all type stereotypes and the negative truths that sometimes come out in the black church as well.
Oh, brothers being predators in the church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think, I always say this, the devil knows the Bible just as much as those who would be more evangelistic. And sometimes people, unfortunately, would come in, dressed in sheep clothing, but they're really the wolf. And we have to be cognizant of that. And we have to have a vanguard to kind of repel that type of mentality and mindset in order to, put the church back in its pristine state again, I believe.
All right, then. So we are at 15 minutes in, and we're going to take a quick break just to remind the people, not a long break, just a quick one to remind the people about station identification and announcements. And then we're going to listen to a song. My brother Black Ice, he just produced a new album, and he's got a song.
Up, Black?
And he's got a song on there where he got a bunch of different sisters, and at the very end of that song there's a sister who's talking about her Jesus piece, and I think it's appropriate for the conversation we have today.
Oh, true indeed.
You are now listening to One Drop Elopes on Intellectual Radio with Moses and Benita Alsed.
Thank you for listening to One Drop Elopes on IntellectualRadio.com, hosted by me and my mom. One Drop Elopes is a constructive response to white supremacy, which is racism. We want to see everyone free. Everyone free. The tea sponsor for One Drop Elopes is Benita's Homemade Things, where you can get scratches cakes and delicious cookies and colorful hats and scarves. One Drop Elopes airs every Sunday at 12 noon Central. Call in at 708-223-8953. Now back to our show.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your poetic conductor, King of Poetry, Black Ice. And when I thought about doing this Verbal Collision album, I thought what better way to kick things off than with 4 beauty and lyrical beats. So we're going to start this thing off with a slam champion. She goes by the name of Princess Prolific. Let's go. You going hard.
I got bars.
Yo, queen, I'm feeling it.
Yo, king, I'm killing it.
You're amazing.
I'm about to unleash.
You a mute.
Nah, I'm a beast. I be beastin', smashing stages. It's different bases. Anybody step to me, lyrically, forsaken, I'm slaying. And I be having their minds turning, heads turning for certain. Even stages lit, beats bodying them. See, bars be apparent. No more baby in stages, so I must be a parent. And I be trying to kill it. Every stage get no obituary. Me being the cause of death. vividly, leaving ashes, cremating and creating some so hot that I heat the floor. Even the stage crumbling, just letting my mind run deep sea. I'm woke, don't sleep. So let's get down to the specifics that may have you conflicted with who I am and how I killed it. Hello, I am prolific.
Next up, we got some poetic royalty in the building. She's a beast woman, and she's an heir to the throne. Ladies and gentlemen, Black Butterfly. Butterfly, you got balls.
No, I got God.
Yo, queen, I'm feeling it.
Royalty reigns in my aesthetic comes also naturally, so homages paid to this majesty. I was birthed into this greatness. I bathed in it to stay steady. My divine purpose was purchased with precious blood before conception. Therefore, I was born ready. Unlike Celie, I was groomed to be a winner as a beginner, like her sister Nettie. I'm the quiet storm behind you. I rain down before you ever notice me. You just happen to look up and my verses be dropping like a plague of words from God's rotary. We be chatting about my passions. I speak them in spirit and in truth. He has anointed and endowed me with the spirits of Mary, Esther, and Ruth. He handpicked me from a million. He plucked me from amongst the stars, then gifted me with pen weaponry so I can put a handle on these bars.
This next beauty and lyrical beast is not only a spoken word vet, but she's an activist. Ladies and gentlemen, no more drop. You going hard.
I got bars.
Yo, queen, I'm feeling it.
Yo, king, I'm killing it.
You're amazing.
I'm about to unleash.
You a beauty.
Now I'm a beast. Lost in a world that's so cold. Thinking that they got her back, but now she's gone. He used her face as a canvas on which he painted. He became her modern day Picasso. Red, blues, blacks, greens, and yellows. And now she has memory loss, because each time he would stroke, he created art. So at least he thought. Now she sits in an 8x10 cell wondering why he doesn't write. Well, this time she decided to become the artiste. And with each and every stroke, there was silence. But she wondering why he does not write. He doesn't write because he sits in a grave 6 feet under the ground. And now she's looking at life in a world that's so cold. Thinking that they got her back, but now she's gone.
This next beauty and lyrical beast is not only an heir to the throne, but she spits for God. Ladies and gentlemen, just go hard. You going hard.
I got bars.
Yo, queen, I'm feeling it.
Yo, king, I'm killing it.
You're amazing.
I'm about to unleash.
You a beauty.
Nah, I'm a beast.
Don't spit a Jesus piece if you ain't Jesus piece, you stillin'. It's all for show, you chillin'. Not walking straight, you walking yellow tape caution. And I take precaution when I'm talking to you. Because what you spit is not true, you're false. Like the Sadducees and the Pharisees. You Sadducee and this is fair, you see, because it's not coming from me, it's coming from the capital G-O-D, you fake. Not in alignment, so when I mention spiritual things, they become judgmental statements because of your focus. You focused on turning up and choking. When I wrote this, I thought to myself, darling, what is you smoking? You gotta be joking. But I'm like Billy for God, he can use my mouth as his ocean. No magical potion, I forsake that witchcraft. I'm deciding on witchcraft, I should work it for Christ. And I'm gonna put the truth in his people if it takes my life. And today I present it as a sacrifice. So don't spit a Jesus piece if you ain't got Jesus peace. You stillin'.
I want to thank all the beauty and lyrical beasts that came out to put your art on this track. It's been truly an honor. I want to say big ups to my girl, Princess Prolific, to my girl, Black Butterfly, to my girl, No More Drama, and Just Go Hard. And I've been your poetic conductor.
We are back. This is Benita Asset, and I'm here with Brother Richard, and we are talking about a constructive response to white supremacy. If you are a Christian, if you follow Jesus, what is your response to white supremacy, which is racism? We have on Facebook, we got Pomo and Brian checking us out. And one of the things that our brother Brian said is that he remembered once being in church where the pastor downgraded a sister just simply because she decided to buy a new car. And when she bought the new car, her tithes ended up being less than what she used to put.
Wow.
So that's what he had put in the thing. But this, I really want this show to not necessarily be uh, a list or a reel of Uncle Tom's
Right.
preachers that we have out there on earth, right? Because there definitely are some good ones too.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, I think that the whole purpose is like the Jesus way is the community way, but it's also the hey, we got to stand up to what's wrong. And I think that's more of where I want this conversation to go. So what would you like to add, Brother Richard, to the conversation?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that last comment. I think what I find myself as a challenge as I was developing, coming to a state of more consciousness without being biased as we look at the world was one thing that kind of pricks me under my fingernail is when our professional friends, the ones with all the degrees and high-paying jobs, and when we sit alone at the table, we're able to really discuss issues from a perspective of seeking out true remedy, because I do believe that in order for this situation to change, we have to be in the forefront of that change. However, I know a lot of them, and I speak of people who are in good paying positions, they see the injustices. Like, I have a few buddies that are police officers, and I know they're good guys, you know what I mean? So it's like, the question was, well, do good cops check the bad cops, you know what I mean? And I'm sure at some point they do. And when you're constantly seeing injustices done to people who are looking like you, and elderly and female and babies being abused, it has to at some point resonate to you that, guess what, this thing is bigger than a uniform. And to my people that's in corporate America, at some point you got to step up. At some point, you have to take that position of resistance and not be overshadowed just by a salary.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really hard for people. Like, after you've already put 10 or 15 years on a job, then after a while you kind of get trapped. It's like it's very difficult to make that choice, to make that move. And I remember talking with the sister once, and she's like, well, I'm in corporate America, so I can't say certain things. I can't support my people.
Right.
I can't be proud. I said, well, I feel like there's always a way, though.
Yes.
And maybe we can give some of those examples to our people today.
Yeah, and it's like forming a code. So often, you have to be able to code switch. Everyone does it. You know what I mean? Every ethnicity, people wear different hats, and they take off certain hats when they're around people in which they feel comfortable with, and that they can kind of, maybe do some mind judo, kind of bounce off their idea, just really have a true think tank. However, it's almost a double standard when it comes to us. And I have a problem with a system that persecute us or try to tell the people that's being oppressed how to respond or how to feel through their pain. So, intellectual wise, the world know that, the quote unquote black man is definitely intelligent. So I don't think that's the argument to even try to out debate the oppressor. We just need to go to work and support one another.
Okay, so I'm reading this book called Black Theology and Black Power, right?
Right.
He says in the chapter 1, he say, I toward a constructive definition of black power.
Yeah.
So he says, I toward a constructive definition of black power. The man's name is James Cone, and he's written several books. He says, if there is no struggle, there is no this is a quote that he's using from Frederick Douglass.
Okay.
If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thundering and lightning. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one,
right,
or it may be a moral and physical, but there must be a struggle. That's Frederick Douglass.
Yeah. And it's interesting you should put it like that. I mean, he should put it like that, because I want to do a compare and contrast to what he's speaking of. And at the time he wrote that, at the time Frederick Douglass was revealing that, it was a time where the pressure was applied to a people that, through all of them being stripped down to maybe the level of intelligence they had with their 4 ways or more ways, when they were at home and came over here to a strange land which wasn't theirs, and were instilled or artificially and simulated another man's way of living. Just to fast forward that up to today's time, we look at our generation now, and a lot of time we accuse them of being in the mindset of being privileged, or they want it right now. And I think a lot of that comes from they don't see or understand the struggle in which their predecessors came before them had to go through.
Okay, let me share something else that he said too.
Okay, come
on. Because you absolutely 100% on point with that, and everything that you described is exactly what Jesus was going through before they.
What's up, Phil? How you doing, baby?
That's exactly what Jesus was going through before they crucified him.
Yeah.
The same response, and so here Frederick Douglass is responding the same way Jesus would respond. But here's another quote that now this one's from James Cone.
Okay,
he say, at least it is no handbook or collection of helpful hints on conducting a revolution. Talking about his book, he's introducing his book. Okay. No one can advise another one when or how to die.
Come on now.
I believe that all aspiring Black intellectuals share the task that Leroy Jones has described for Black artists in America, which is to aid in the destruction of America as he knows it. So it is a response of everybody. We all are creative in our own way. His role, so now he's going back to it. His role as the Black person, his role is to report and reflect so precise the nature of the society that other men will be moved by the exactness of his rendering. And if they are Black men, grow strong through this moving, having seen their own strength and weakness. And if they are white men, tremble, curse, and go mad, because they will be drenched with the filth of their evil.
Wow.
I am critical of white America because this is my country, and what is mine must not be spared.
Yeah.
Which spared, I learned working with some students, is a synonym of forgiveness.
Say something about this church issue. I and it's almost a game that's being played by the system. Just like now, we here in Chicago, we having a mayoral election coming up soon, and we have a candidate that doesn't speak as most people in modern day of 2018 would accept. However, I was talking to some of my buddies. What's going on, John Ivy? I was talking to some of my buddies, and one of the things I shared with them, he speaks like our grandparents did, and it was, during the Great Migration from the South to come north in order to get better jobs and have a sustainable lifestyle for your children. And it was just so limited because education was limited. And just like the church, I think, anytime you go, if you can go down Madison, you see 7 to 8 other buildings that's actually on the actual block being church. And then everyone has a different ideology approaching, the supreme being, the grand architect. Instead of spending time saying who's right, let's spend time locking elbows and start elevating our youth and start being productive, being progressive. I think then and once and only then, when we start to do that, people of the world will fall back in place and start respecting their mother and fathers.
Thank you so much for saying that. Instead of wasting our time figuring out who's better, who's worse, that I remember when we first had this first show, Moses was on with us at that time, and Moses said, well, I thought revolutionary was, like he raised his hand, like he had a sword, he was ready to, kill some people with it. And then we said that there's all kinds of ways to revolution, and that's definitely one of them.
Yeah, just a simple revolt against something that you're just sick and tired of just being implemented on you without any just, and it's just so funny. Even a animal that has 4 legs can process the fact if they're being treated right or wrong. And humans, those of us who walked erect on the planet, we have to somebody has to stand up. And unfortunately, I think the people should not just put all that pressure on one person to stand up, because then once that person is assassinated or that person sells out, then what? We get back to the blaming game. But if we move as a unit, it's almost like when when the water buffalo is crossing, the big rivers in the Serengeti, but the alligators are in there. We know that somebody might get caught, but but for most of all, the unit gets across the river safely. And that is the sacrifice. Until we're ready to make sacrifice in a positive way, we're just gonna be spinning our wheels.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to share another quote from James Cone from his book, The Black Theology and the Black Power.
Yeah.
It is my thesis, however, that Black power, even in its most radical expression, is not the antithesis of Christianity. And so for those people who feel, and so now I'm adding my little spin on it.
Okay.
For those people who feel like in order to be Christian, you can't be black, or to be black, you can't be Christian. So I'm really speaking to those people right now. Repeat. It is my thesis, however, that black power, even in its most radical expression, is not the antithesis of Christianity, nor is it a heretical idea to be tolerated with painful forbearance. Right. It is rather Christ's central message to 20th century America, and unless the empirical denominational church makes a determined effort to recapture the man, Jesus, through a total identification with the suffering poor as expressed in Black power, that church will become exactly what Christ is not.
Yeah. That, unfortunately, that's the game. That's the play. You hear people say, well, I'm a religious guy. I actually don't put myself in a category. I'm a man of spirituality. You could be religious and doing anything. Right now I'm a religious water drinker. I consume a lot of water, just to keep myself health bound in order. But if I had to say something, I would say Sunday is the most segregated hour on the planet here in North America, because on the majority of Black Christians don't sit down with European or Christians on Sunday. Everyone, they're supposed to be drawn from the same book, but there's a lot. I can imagine only how many interpretations that are actually being given to the congregation from the minister, the clergy that's ahead of that building, and helping the people understand, the word of God, as they would put it.
And I'm glad you spoke about the separatists. Our role and objective, especially here on One Drop Elopes, is to be a collective for the whole entire diaspora of Black folk.
Yeah.
We all supposed to be one big family.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult if we're separated like that.
Yeah, I was talking to one of my one of my associates who's of a European persuasion, and we just kind of talking open and honestly with one another. And I just told him, the truth of the matter, everybody's African, and I can erase the word African, because we had to use Africanus Scipio. We could just say Nubian. Everybody's Nubian, you know what I mean? And just where you just fell out, I don't know if you want to say the environment that had that hue of skin the way you are, but the people who are most privileged, they are not going to sacrifice being in a situation where they're privy just based on this permanent uniform to give up to come save a person that's being persecuted as a whole. They may be liberal about their ideologies and approaches, but to really give up the total sacrifice for injustices, and that means that, guess what, you would have to lose some of your privilege. And that's the question of the day when it's to come dealing with this race issue here in America and worldwide.
Let's talk about that a little bit more when we come back from the break. We're going to pause real quickly for station announcements and identification.
Yeah, true that. Assalamu alaikum, big brother. My big brother showing up.
We're gonna listen to another one of Black Ice's songs. It's on this new album, number 11. It's gonna talk about some of what we've been talking about.
Yeah, it's my man. Come on, Shot Town. Stand up.
You're listening to One Drop Elopes with Benita Osset and Moses on IntellectualRadio.com. Thank you for listening to One Drop Elopes on IntellectualRadio.com. hosted by me, Benita Offset. One Drop Elopes is a constructive response to white supremacy, which is racism. We want to see everyone free. The chief sponsor for One Drop Elopes is Benita's Homemade Things, where you can get scrumptious cake and delicious cookies, as well as colorful hats, scarves, and gloves. One Drop Elopes airs on IntellectualRadio.com every Sunday at 12 noon Central. Call in at 708-223-8953. That's 708-223-8953. Now, back to our show.
When you look at the news and see what's going on in our communities, did you ever think about what was going on behind the scenes? I came here so you could talk to me. As a matter of fact, close your eyes, let our souls connect, and just take a spiritual walk. Because we gotta ask ourselves some questions. These problems need solutions. So break out your pen and pad and take notes. Because today, Black Ice is offering lessons. Tell me, why is it that freedom ain't free? And why is it that although our eyes are wide open, there's some things that we still can't see? See, all this war is spiritual. And since words are spirits, I'm coming lyrical. And since ignorance is the killer that's serial, this material is a blessing. No, matter of fact, it's a miracle. It's the red.
If the federal government refuses to intercede on our behalf when we are slaves, then we must rise up.
Fortune 500 status. To a new way of life, the board tried to introduce us. Mr. Hoover tried to produce us and move us to make positive maneuvers for the future. But snakes slithered in the grass of our infrastructure like the dreads of Medusa. And through all this confusion, we let our lower passions do us. See, in this land of Al Capone, Frank Nitti, Pretty Boy Ford, and Willie Lloyd, there's an unappreciation for the underprivileged and the unemployed. Plus, the African culture's significance has nearly been destroyed in the land of desolate waste where life is void. See, in this land of Boxtails, Caldwells, and Machine Gun Kellys, where the serpent was cursed to forever eat the dust of the ground and slide on his belly, cause internal conflicts amongst black youth like Palestinians and Israelis. See, the devil gave me Cain. I said the devil gave me Cain because he wasn't able to excel me. But back in the days, black folks used to own policy. They took that from us and created the Illinois State Lottery. Gave us no royalties, no contracts, no apologies. Just replaced our mantle with concrete sorrows and icky Cabrini Greens and Ida B's.
They're gonna keep killing us. But when we die and they die, then soon we're gonna sit at a table and talk about we tired. We want some of this earth. But we'll tear this goddamn country up.
Why is it that most of our lives we just labor, sweat, and hustle?
Hey, you're back with us on IntellectualRadio.com. I'm your host, Benita Offset, and the show is One Drop Elopes. You just finished listening to my Chicago's own black brother, Black Ice. And so we sitting here today talking about if Jesus is a revolutionary, then what is a constructive response to those who follow him, also known as, aka Christians?
Yeah, come on now.
Okay, so Jesus is a revolutionary. Jesus is working hard to fight other people, and we have a conversation about that. And right before the break, we were talking about how the community needs separating themselves, work together.
Right.
And so let's come up with, in our last little 10 minutes, of constructive responses that we can do to be constructive, for those who identify as Christian, for those who are constructive responses.
Make his work, make it more, I think a lot of times, when the minister, when they find themselves giving instructions about what Jesus did and how he did it, or how to do it and how it should be done, it's such a metaphor and peace of spirituality, versus saying, hey, I'm putting in the work, I'm helping those help. If it's from a monetary gain, if you have to give up something more than what you have, you start saying, hey, I'm speaking truth to power. That is the real challenge. And I think that's the real episode in which we as a people people, you know, have to collectively come together in order to speak that truth to power. And, you know, that's the minister, you know, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. You know, he's been doing that for over 50 years, and nobody's been compared to do that, such as he has been able to do. So, yeah, as a people, we got to wake up, because we had Marcus Garvey. I know the leaders within our predecessor line is amazing, and I want to be able to share that with our youth. You know what I mean? Because the children not knowing that they don't know what they need to know, and that scares me.
So not only speaking the truth and walking the truth, so speak the truth, but then in action, walk the truth.
Oh, yeah, I said, like as my boy the Migos would say, hey, walk it like you talk it.
So and
talking like you walk it.
For instance, some of the things that Jesus said was like, for instance, I remember, you know, listening to this one brother, Chairman O'Malley, talk about, you know, if Jesus is revolutionary, then why is your pastor such an Uncle Tom? You can see that on YouTube.
Come on now.
And like one of the things he said on there is that the people were like kind of whining and complaining about lives lost. And he was like, we're in the middle of a war right now. He's like, let the dead bury the dead. Now another thing that he had mentioned, another scripture that he mentioned in sharing this with the people, was that when a lot of times people will say, well, you know, Jesus was an you know, kind and for everybody, and he was like, turn the cheek. He said, nah, he wasn't saying turn the cheek against the Roman Empire.
Okay.
He was saying turn the cheek against all the other Jews, like your fellow brethren. So like
right.
Right.
Come on, don't get it right. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So then he's saying, you know, it doesn't make sense for us to be harming each other.
Right.
And that's one of the principles of One Drop Elopes, is that we will be kind to each other.
Absolutely. And I think based on the condition in which we've been placed in, we have to seek kindness and we have to seek patience, because right now, you know, Black people as a whole, they're not in their right mind. They're not in their right mind, because if they were in their right mind, this topic would be something that we wouldn't have to address in the matter, because it'll just be common knowledge. You know what I mean? And so we would know that those stories of Jesus and his morale structure in which he wanted to leave for the people, that would be something that we would live innately day in and day out.
Okay. All right, thank you. I really don't have a lot of questions. That's why I really wanted this show to just be about some conversations, because it's like I have a very strong feeling about this. I feel like I don't think there is a spiritual war going on. Well, I mean, I don't think there's a religious war, let me put it that way, going on. Like, I don't see, when I step out the house, there's not anybody to ever get upset with me if I choose to be a Christian, or if I choose to be a Muslim, or if I choose to be a Jewish, person. I don't get feedback from that. I do, however, get feedback, discrimination, domination, mistreatment, race based on racism, right? Like, people will.
Yeah, that system is real. That system of racism is real, and it's relevant.
That color, you can't take that off.
Right.
And that's the reason why it's so important for me that that's more important. Or fighting racism, or fighting, trying to get us to not have white supremacy anymore, for us to have a just system, is far more important to me than what would Jesus. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't know. What's your response, though?
You know what? I think outside the box on my approach with a lot of different elements. And one of the things that I would consider thinking outside the box is, just on the religious piece, I think if we could reconnect to the true essence of where we come from, how we did things, and just really wrap ourselves in our culture, it becomes really misleading when we adapt another man's culture in 4 ways and expect the same success. It's like an oxymoron. It's really absurd. And a lot of my buddies and I, or just a few within there, we see the bigger picture. So one of the things we've been running strong for is just entrepreneurship. And a lot of people get that entrepreneurship piece mixed up. What we're basically telling you is, guess what? Collectively come together with your own black dollars and build your own systems, and your institutions in which you could teach your children. I think, that would make this place a better planet if we took our rightful positions and just started being the head and stop being so acceptable and allowing ourselves
Like we
to
had
be
a
the
show,
tail.
we had a show, bro, with Big Raw
Uh-huh.
on capitalism versus racism, and that was one of the things that our brother said. He said, if we had our own, we wouldn't need theirs. So his thing is like, which is hurting us worse, capitalism or racism? And so he kind of felt like it was. He feels like they both, really, really bad, right?
Yeah.
But his position is, if we utilize capitalism for our own good, and not their way, but our way, like
Right.
the African way.
Right.
And here's an example that he used. I wouldn't need to go and ask white supremacist man for a job or white supremacist woman for a job, because I can always go to my people for that. And so then the racial matters would be less of a problem if we had our own. That's kind of how he was looking at it.
Right, because how are other people seeing you once you sit down at the table? Are they seeing you as a beggar or a pauper? Are they seeing you as somebody who's progressive and being productive? And unfortunately, when somebody...
And we can't put them all in.
Right.
Can't put in all the black people. So then you got black people competing with each other because there could only be one token at the table.
But guess what? But it's only a token when somebody's looking for an approval from somebody. You know what I'm saying? So guess what? I can't be a token if I'm not looking for an approval from this person. Or I need this person or people to validate who I am or what I am or what's my objective. You know what I mean? So everybody has their own objective, and every ethnic group. You look at the Spanish people here in Chicago. They are making a great push within our communities, but they're coming in with businesses. They're coming in with services, and unfortunately, we forgot how to spend money with us because when I look back in history, and it's not even more than 50 years ago. We were the carpenters, we were the landscape guys, we was the people come in and fix your ovens or do the HVAC. And now, like I said, going back to my buddies my people who are in the corporate America, they're like, I ain't gonna spend no money on no black person. And it's so funny when a black person trying to present something, they got to get processed. And I'd be damned if I sit by and let somebody who's even my own color try to process me, because I've been processed. You see what I'm saying? Every day of my life, we're being processed. And so in order to do business, you got to hear 100 million questions, or somebody going to Google something and say, well, I saw a complaint on what you're trying to do. And I'll say, guess what? Walmart, Burger King, and all those other huge institutions, they got a bunch of complaints put on them every day, but they still billion-dollar companies.
Right. Cooperative economics, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the black church is in a very strategic position to support that ideology. They can do all of these things.
No doubt,
if
you're
going to be taking up every corner on every block, then these are things that I feel like the black church can't do. They need to be the warriors for us. I want to share also.
But it's hard for them to be the warriors for us, though, Benita, when they receiving funding
from the government.
From the government, FBI, as my good
they
brother
need to let go.
always say.
They need to let go of those 501c3s.
Yeah.
Just let it go.
Yeah.
So I had another brother on Facebook today, my brother Jermaine. He put up a post that said, Black women will more likely, Christian Black women will more likely marry a white man than a Black man if the white man is Christian and the Black man isn't. And
interesting.
No, I don't feel that way. That is definitely not my subscription. I didn't even respond yet, but all the women who did respond, they always like, "Yep,
yeah,
absolutely," because we don't have the ideology, or too many of us do not have the ideology of Black first. Some way, somewhere, it was important to be. It was important to be Christian first.
You know what? And that goes back to, what the the Honorable Marcus Mosaic Garvey, has stated, So we have to, put, people say, don't put no race first. But the truth of the matter, Black people are the interracials. You know what I mean? Most people stick amongst their own. A conversation was held, did segregation help us or did it worsen us? And I just say, hey, let's look at the facts, and let's look at the statistics, and let's look at what actually took place once we emerged into that. And you do your due diligence. I think that's a question that would be answered during the process of doing your due diligence, or just say, hey, look at us now, So, it's like the elephant in the room, so to speak.
Well, I would even argue that it's black first, regardless of what race you are. It's the most oppressed group. If you're a Christian and you call yourself wanting to help, or you want to reverse the social order of things, you want to make things better, Jesus clearly, if he came down today, he would look at the environment and see that black people are the worst, the most oppressed group. And not worst. I apologize. My words are trembling. But black folk, especially black men, the most oppressed group.
So why is that?
Because of why I would just say white supremacy.
And the crazy part about it, it's on the globe. I mean, no matter where you go on the globe,
around the world,
you see it.
So if you're a Christian, basically, we coming to a close now. Our time, of course, is very limited here on Intellectual Radio. Yeah. But One Drop Elopes wants to come to a close with our brother Richard. Thank you so much, bro, for being in the studio with us.
Sister. Anytime.
So the list that we came up with is to speak the truth, walk the truth, be kind and supportive to your fellow man, work towards cooperative economics, and that all folk on earth need to be black first. If you're a Christian, you claim to be a Christian, and you follow somebody who's a revolutionary, then your constructive response should be to fight for black folk.
Well, a lot of people have a problem being able to speak truth to power. And I just want to say this: no one wins the race to racism. You know what I mean? But we've been blessed and cursed just by the hue of our skin, and just time to wake up, man. For the further generations. If not, they're going to be looking at us in museums and say, hey, those are the people, who built the pyramids, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? They're great basketball players, but they're not going to, I don't think they would honestly reveal our contribution accordingly. And it's important that our children know their history. So, everyone else know who and what they are, and they know it so well. They even know us better than we know ourselves. And then that's a paradigm change we got to definitely switch from.
All right. Well, thank you so much to the people on Facebook.
Big up. What's up, Facebook?
Thank you to the people on YouTube.
No doubt.
Thanks to anybody downloading this broadcast, listening to our audios on Spreaker, or iTunes, or iHeart. And also thanks to Earl for being our executive producer and sound man.
Appreciate you, Earl.
Thanks again.
Come together
for Brother Richard coming to the show. So, and we have done our thank yous, and you've been just listening to One Drop Elopes with Benita Osset and Moses, and this has been just a constructive conversation about Jesus as a revolutionary, how our Christian fellow brethren should respond to white supremacy. Thanks a lot. Until next time, see you next Sunday, 12 noon Central. Don't forget to come check out Tone after me.
Listening to One Drop Elopes on Intellectual Radio, hosted by my daughter, Benita Osset. Benita Osset is on Instagram, Morris, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Email your thoughts, questions, concerns, or opinions to benitaosset@gmail.com. Benita will be happy to respond. Join Benita every Sunday at 12 noon on IntellectualRadio.com.